Okay. Hi, AJ. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Greetings. Well, good to be here.
So you've got a bunch of book series, according to John. A few of them. The ones that I see on here: Worst Date, Greatest Challenge, and Vampire Academy. Those are
Academia, actually.
Academia. Okay.
Yeah.
And
It actually was originally Vampire Academy, but then my publisher told me there's already a series with that as the first book.
aside from those two, then I see some other things on here. Uh, you've written a lot. Yeah, it looks like. Why don't you give us your backstory, and then we can hit a couple of your series that you want to plug and promote.
Okay. Well, as for my boring day job, I'm a civil engineer, but I'm also rather creative. And let's face it, when you're writing reports that are going to be submitted to some review agency, you can't say things like, "Oh well, the stormwater will cascade down the gentle slopes of the pond, and then the sunlight will glisten like diamonds upon its surface." Reviewers don't want to see that kind of stuff, so I had to find a creative outlet that was more amenable to such endeavors. And the first time out was a murder mystery that I wrote some years back, and that I was actually very proud of it. I mean, I really put a lot of effort into it, but still looking to find a publisher on that one. Then later, I was enjoying the Harry Potter books with my daughter, and she was really into those. But I took note of the fact that, geez, you got here a very boy-centric series. The main girl in it, Hermione, is not a very proactive character. She's the one who's always telling the boys, don't do this, don't do that, don't go into the Forbidden Forest. And I was like, oh, geez, why can't you have a series again? The girl could be a little more proactive, uh, being the go-getter. And my daughter's name is Alexa, and mind you, I named her that before the Amazon thing came out.
Oh,
So
good for you.
yeah, but well, she still doesn't forgive us for that. It's like, well, we didn't know Amazon was going to do that. Jeez, don't blame us. Um, but anyway, so I wrote a sci-fi series called Lexa and the Gordian Maze of Terra, and it's the first in a series. And the first two books got published by a company called Amira Press that was out of Baltimore, Maryland. And it was a modest success. I mean, certainly not like Rowling or Grisham or anything like that, but we had some decent sales. And then the company went out of business, and the rights reverted back to me. And then I continued writing on. I wrote some screenplays, teleplays, came up with a couple of TV series. Here in Orlando, we've got a very large movie and television industry. So forever writing different things and pitching them to different companies. And then I saw the cable series for Outlander. And I was not familiar with the series at all, though I knew it was based on books. And it was about this woman time traveling back and getting involved in the Scottish Rebellion. And I did the classic, well, it was pretty good, but I think I could do I could do better on this. And I came up with the idea of the worst date, greatest adventure story. And initially my idea was to have these two young people go back in time, and they would get involved in something in the Revolutionary War. And I was going to make it some, totally fictional place. But as it happens, growing up as a kid, I spent all my summers on the island of Martha's Vineyard. Now, this was back in the 60s and 70s. So it was, well, shall we say, more welcoming to the middle classes than it is now. I mean, geez, pretty much the playground of the rich, really. But back then, in the town of Oak Bluffs, my father he had the saying, he said, Oak Bluffs is the poor man's town on the rich man's island. Because in Oak Bluffs, there are these little cottages that, I mean, they are strictly summer. There's no way you could survive in them in winter. Very primitive things, very beautiful. They're covered in this ornate gingerbread, which, makes them very popular. And my parents had bought one. And so every summer as a kid, went down there and hung out with my friends and, went fishing and go to the beach, all the usual fun things. So my first thought was to create like a fictional island for them to, for my characters to inhabit. But then I pulled out these books on the history of Martha's Vineyard that, of all things, my oldest brother, he had given them to me as a birthday present some years back. And I started looking at the history of the island during the Revolutionary War. And I was like, holy Toledo, man, the stuff that went on here. Forget fictional island. I'm putting my characters on Martha's Vineyard and then just have them get involved in stuff that actually happened. And man, half my book's going to be written for me, you know, in terms of plot points and things like that. And so I started writing the book, and it kept getting longer and longer. And I started thinking, maybe I should like find a break point here, and I'll split it into 2 books. And so I found a place where I thought was a good break, and then I started submitting the manuscript to various agents and publishers, and lo and behold, this company, Champagne Book Group, they expressed interest in it, and they published the first book, and then they, of course, they're asking me, well, you know, what about the second? You know, how much of a series is this going to be? And I told them originally I was looking at just a second book, and they said, is there any way could you lengthen it out? We'd really like a trilogy. I really think it would work better as a trilogy. And so I did some more research into the history of Martha's Vineyard, and I found some events that took place, well, frankly, out of the time period of my story. But I thought, you know, this is a work of fiction. I can, like, you know, borrow this and shift this and move that around, and bulked it up. And just last year, book 2 in the series came out, and I'm currently working on book 3. This one's going to be Worst Date, Greatest Battle. Because it culminates with a final big battle between the Islanders and the British soldiers, and then the characters will return to come back to the future.
When did you start this series?
Well, let's see. I was writing the first book. Let's see. Goodness, it's probably been now at least 4 years.
And the publisher that you're with, are they like a boutique publisher?
Well, I don't know what that term means.
Well, it's like a small publisher. No, they're not one of the big New York Five.
Definitely not one of the big houses. No.
Okay.
As I say, it's called Champagne Book Group. I think they're out of, if I remember correctly, Seattle, Washington. And they're a publisher. They accept direct submissions from authors. Because over the years, I've sent my book to numerous agents, and it's like you really got it. You either have to be like somebody who's established, or a celebrity, or you know, or your book is the greatest thing since the first Harry Potter book, for agents and big time publishers to give you the time of day.
Well, you have to have an agent, and it's almost as hard to get the agent as it is to get the publisher to say yes to publish your book.
Yeah.
And I've heard that over and over again. So,
because let's face it, the agents, they are the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
You know, the whole reason they have a good relationship with publishers is because the publishers know, okay, this person is going to vet these authors, and if they're presenting something to me, then it's worth looking at.
Yeah, exactly. So why did you decide to go that route rather than just self-publish?
Well, frankly, I had tried some self-publishing. I have a book. It's an anthology, collection of, I think it's like 20 or 30 short stories about my childhood on Martha's Vineyard. And originally, I had published them via a website. There's a website called Grub Street, grubstreet.ca, because it's from Canada. And the webmaster, I guess you would call him, the designer of the website, is a professor with a college there. And every week he would accept one story from me and from other contributors, of course. And they would post them up there. And he loved some of my stories about growing up on Martha's Vineyard, as I say, riding the carousel of the flying horses, or climbing the clay cliffs of Aquina and things like that. And so I submitted a whole bunch of those, and then over time, it's like, well, geez, how many stories can you tell about your childhood? I branched out into other things. But eventually I took what I considered like kind of the top ones, and I put them together as an anthology book. And like with my others, I tried submitting it to publishers, and it's like, no interest. So that one I went ahead and self-published on Amazon as both paperback and a Kindle. And then one time when I was up visiting the Martha's Vineyard, I took along a whole bunch of the books, and several of the gift shops and bookstores accepted copies of them and put them in their stores. So it felt like, oh, okay, I'm doing this myself. And what I've found is it's like when you're doing the self-publishing, boy, it is very labor intensive. I mean, boy, you've got to put forth an awful lot of work on it. And with me being a civil engineer, I don't exactly have a lot of free time on it. So I was just hoping that, hey, with the publisher, they would have their own marketing and promotions and could help get the book out in front of people, and get what do they call it, advanced reader copies to various people to read and review them and post reviews. And so I've always tried doing that. And of course, these days with some of my more recent works, I'm thinking, well, maybe I should, just go ahead and self-publish.
Well, there's something to be said for both ways. It depends how much you want to get involved with it, how much work you want to put in, and compared to how much work the publisher wants to put in. Because, they may be lazy about promoting your book if they don't have a lot of confidence in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we quickly are running down on time here. We've got about 2 minutes. So,
oh, goodness, okay.
Can you give us a fast overview of the other one that we mentioned, the vampire?
Yes, that's I call it a teen vampire adventure book. I always stress it is not like Twilight, not a sappy little love story. The idea behind that was I wanted to treat vampirism as like an actual disease. Again, I've seen movies like Underworld and I think Daybreak or Daybreakers was another, where the idea is it's an actual disease that people contract, then they become a vampire. So I thought, well, okay, let's take that, so it's a disease. So I went through and I kind of outlined, how you would contract it, what would be the result, things like, well, you're not going to be invisible in a mirror because, come on, that's the old classic, Bela Lugosi type vampire. This has to be more scientifically based. So my story opens 10 years after the outbreak of the disease, and vampires are the new minority, you might say. And Rosemary, this 16-year-old girl, she commits the ultimate finger in the eye, so to speak, to her parents, that she went out and got turned by a close family friend. And the parents are now, oh my goodness, we have a vampire daughter. And so they ship her off to this private academy that says that they can cure vamps, make them norm. So of course there's obviously a subtext there. And she ends up getting kidnapped by some members of the Anti-Vamp League and held for ransom. And so then it becomes very much of an adventure story where you have the authorities investigating, you have her friends at school suspecting that something's going on, so they're investigating. Then you have Rosemary with her, she's being held on this little deserted island, and so she's trying to escape from her captors. And then so you've got all these different people all working on this adventure, and culminating with her making a daring escape and her friends and authorities arriving, and then the big resolution.
So this one is also a series?
Well, actually, no. I wrote it as a standalone, but my publisher has actually asked, could you possibly make this into a series? And I was like, I hadn't thought about it, but I started outlining a sequel called Vampire Education. And so when I finish the third book in the time travel series, well, I may give that one a go and see what happens with it.
Well, AJ, unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Last question, do you have a website that you want to give out?
Well, no, I don't have a personal one.
Okay.
I can just say that, if you look up Champagne Book Group, that my books are listed on that, and they are, of course, on Amazon.
Okay. We'll send people to Amazon, and we'll put up the book cover of the Worst Date, Greatest Challenge. the latest one, I
Okay.
think. Okay. Well, thank you for coming on the show. It was nice meeting you. Best of luck with all your
Yeah.
work.
Well, it was good meeting you too. I enjoyed it.